So this happened last summer. It was around 11 p.m. and I was sitting at my dining table, typing away on my final paper of the semester. Behind me sits a kitchen table and a big window that overlooks my backyard. This backyard was surrounded completely by a 6-foot vinyl privacy fence, and inside that fence was a little garden I'd been working hard on. Lots of cute flowers and a small pond. I was proud of it and would leave my blinds open so I could take in all my hard work during the day. I was caught up in my paper that was due by midnight, and since it was late, my dogs were snoozing away nearby. My concentration was broken by a very sudden, very loud, and very deliberate behind me. I froze completely, and it dawned on me I never closed my blinds. All of my interior lights were on, and we know how that works. Whoever was tapping could see me perfectly. Weirdly and inconveniently enough, my dogs who normally bark at the slightest noise were still sound asleep. It took me about 5 minutes to muster the slightest ounce of courage to turn my head just enough to see the window in my periphery, only to hear a loud crunch and another couple of taps, just a bit lighter. Nope, fuck that. No need to look. The last thing I needed to see was a face pressed up against that window. To my left was a door to the carport, which led to the backyard. The handle was within arm's reach, and I wouldn't have to look out the window to open it. I called my dogs, and they jumped up as soon as I turned the knob. I guess the watcher realized what I did. About 30 seconds passed, and I heard a couple more crunches, then a very loud thud. If you've ever heard a vinyl fence being smacked against, it's a bit distinctive, and I knew that they jumped it. My dogs finally went nuts, and I ran to the window near the thud, lights off and blinds closed there thankfully. I caught a quick glimpse of a leg disappearing behind my neighbor's house. I stayed up until dawn with my metal baseball bat and one of those giant sharp grill forks. With the fence and dogs, I always felt safe. How they got back there so quietly, I'll never know. I've lived here my whole life and never had anything happen, so this has definitely shaken me. Whoever that was wanted me to know that they were there and definitely wanted my attention. I've since installed multiple cameras and motion lights all around the perimeter of my house. It's been quiet since. I feel better, but that illusion of safety has all but disappeared. A few years back during a hot summer, I was facing a line of sun-baked tourists making purchases of water bottles, first aid kits, and trekking poles. One by one, I rung them up, and out the door they went. A greasy-looking man stood to the left of me, outside the counter. He had a dirty bandana on his head, a white shirt stained by sweat and the southwestern red dirt. His cargo shorts barely held onto his gaunt hips with a piece of rope. His backpack reeked of sweat and cooking oil, rancid from the July sun. "What are you doing later tonight?" he asked. Not once, but twice. I replied with a straightforward, "Can I help you find anything?" He just stared me down and said, "Are you 21 or older and looking to meet new people? What are you doing after work?" I once again, in a more standoffish tone, said, "Nothing. I'm going home to my husband. If you don't need anything, leave me alone." My manager Rob was standing right behind me, unnoticed. He asked the sweaty man to leave the store if he wasn't making a purchase. Rob handed me a stack of hangers and said, "Bring these to the back," a signal to get myself to safety. I sat in the back room, sipped my water, and texted my boyfriend about the situation, letting him know it was icky feeling. Unfortunately, he wouldn't answer because he was away on a day-long river trip with his river company. I gathered up some courage and went out to the front to finish my shift. The rest of the afternoon faded into night, and all was well, or at least so I thought. The open sign clicked over to closed. The floor was swept, and we eagerly finished counting the money so we could rush home to food and air conditioning. I grabbed 2 light bags of trash and headed outside. Our strip plaza was fairly well lit, next to a grocery store, and still had folks coming and going. I walked towards the dumpster, lifted the lid, dropped the garbage in, and spun back around. There he was. "Are you 21 and older and looking to meet new people? Will you come with me? What are you doing now that your shift is over?" He took a step towards me. "Fuck off, you creep," I screamed into the now seemingly empty parking lot. I faced him, made direct eye contact, and continued my loud protest. What the hell is going on? I thought to myself. This is our small town. It feels safe. We can leave our keys in the ignition, our front doors unlocked, hike alone. I maintained distance and backed toward the store, faster and faster. I slid through the front door and locked it behind me. I called out for Rob, and he immediately ran over. He told me to call my boyfriend. My boyfriend showed up within minutes, finally off of the river, and absolutely pissed off that I was being harassed and potentially kidnapped by a dirty vagabond traveler. I saw my boyfriend exit his car with a large wrench in hand, but didn't hear much of the words exchanged, only "I better not fucking see you in this town ever again. Do you understand, you fucking creep?" Both of us were really charged up, and we left in his car, never to see the greasy man again. A month or so later, I was riding in my bike home, one hand on my quick-deployed pepper spray, the other on my brake lever. I crossed an open patch at the end of the high school, ready to head on the bike path. All of a sudden, in my right peripheral, I see a figure running toward me at full speed. I stand up on my pedals and start racing as fast as the grass would allow me. I make it to the street and avoid the bike path, riding under brightened streetlights and a few folks out on their porches and patios. After another long, desolate stretch of country road, I slide into my driveway and into my empty trailer, hopeful I don't have another encounter. This all happened about 2 years ago when I was 25. I used to work overnight shift at a hotel. It was a cruisy job. I worked alone, and after my audit was finished, the rest of my night was free to Netflix and occasionally do the university work I intended to do. I lived a 6-minute walk from the hotel, and often used my 1 a.m. break to walk back home and grab dinner or a phone charger I'd forgotten. I know, not the smartest idea, but I'd been doing this walk home and back for 1 a.m. for years, without an issue, until this night. At 10 p.m., I would walk to work. I wouldn't describe the street I walked down as sketchy or dangerous, though there was one house I passed on this walk, which I knew some dodgy characters resided in, and after a while, I figured from the amount of people who would park outside the house for only a few minutes and then return, they were likely drug dealers. So on this particular night, I left from my walk to work at around 10 p.m. and noticed a dodgy drug dealer's house surrounded by a number of police. I thought nothing of it, just figured they had been caught for their activities, and continued to walk to work. At 1 a.m. on my break, I headed off to my usual walk home to grab dinner. I was a little curious as to what happened with the drug house, so I glanced at the house a few times on the way past to see if anything seemed out of place. It didn't. But unbeknownst to me, this glance was a big mistake. After dinner at home, I started on my walk back to the hotel. As I walked down the one long road ending in the hotel, a car began driving erratically next to me. First it slowed down and passed me, then suddenly hit the brakes and jerked the steering into the gutter as if to park, before speeding up again and repeating this twice just ahead of me. Eventually the car comes to a complete stop about 100 meters ahead of me, on the opposite side of the road to which I'm walking. The driver got out and crossed the road to stand directly in my path, whilst the front passenger got out, rounded the back of the car, and opened the back door on the driver's side and just stands next to the open door. Hell no. Abso-fucking-lutely not I was going to continue walking toward that setup. So I turn around and start walking back in the direction I had come. Then the driver starts to call out to me, "Come back! Where are you going?" His calls got angrier and more aggressive, so I took off at a sprint back in the direction I came, aiming to take a right down the street, separating the 2 blocks of the road ahead that would take me back to the hotel. I rounded the first corner just as I heard the car doors slam and the tires screech. I rounded the second right, slipping on the grass, running faster than I ever have. I could see the hotel, only 1 more block to sprint, but halfway it was too late. I heard the car roar up beside me, a massive stitch in my side, and had no choice but to slow to a walk, initiate plan B, talk fast. It was a man driving, shirtless and skinny as a rake. I still remember the matted, long, black dreads and almost completely black eyes. A woman sat in the passenger seat. Same skinny, drawn look to her face, covered in scabs and pinpricks for pupils. Fantastic. Meth heads. They were both yelling at me, demanding to know what I was doing walking at night. I work at the hotel and I just went home for dinner. Leave me alone. But they persisted, getting more aggressive with the yelling, and suddenly the woman jumps out of the car, runs in front of it to get right in my face, almost getting run over by her boyfriend in the process. She starts screaming in my face that I'm a liar, and what am I really doing? Meanwhile, the man takes the car down an alleyway, just next to where they had caught up to me. He got out of the car and started calling down the alleyway, "Come to the car!" She's completely erratic now, demanding to know the truth as to why I'm walking at night. I'm freaking the fuck out, trying to figure out what the hell is going on, and the woman says, "I know you're lying. Why are you walking? Some shit has gone down here tonight." I began to connect the dots. The drug house, the police earlier that night, my second glance at the house, 2 meth heads. "I know," I told the woman, taking her completely off guard. "Like I told you, I walked to and from my work. I saw all the police around that house at 10 p.m. Finally, she sees reason. Our house was run through with guns earlier tonight. You seemed suspicious when you walked past and were looking at our house," she tells me. "It all makes sense. These crazy meth heads think I'm involved with the people that robbed their house." Meanwhile, the man had heard none of this exchange and was storming back to the alleyway towards me. He was angry. He pushed his girlfriend aside while she tried to explain the situation and started on forcefully verbally interrogating me. Too bad though, he didn't believe my story. Next minute, he takes a hammer out of his pocket, holding it menacingly between us, and he asked again why I was out walking. I tried to explain, but he was only getting more angry. He turned around and handed the hammer to his girlfriend, before pulling a handgun from his bag and asking me again why I was out walking. I began explaining again, a little more desperate this time for good fucking reason. I hadn't even the fewest of words before the woman completely freaked out at the man for pulling the gun and got in his face telling him to put the fucking gun away. And amongst all the chaos, I took my opportunity. I wasn't asking permission before I turned and sprinted half the block back to the hotel, leaving the meth heads mid-domestic. After I got back to the hotel, had a smoke, or 3, and processed what the fuck just happened, the realization dawned on me. The man's intentions, had I continued to walk toward the open car door, would have been to abduct and potentially torture information I didn't have out of me with a hammer. All down to a wrong place, wrong time scenario.